Welcome to Sales is Not a Dirty Word, the podcast that shows you how to convert 8 out of 10 sales conversations without acting like a douchebag. I'm your host, innovative sales coach Aleasha Bahr, the creator of the Black Sheep Sales Method, because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved. If you're a service provider selling your own service who's ready to sell differently than the mainstream status quo and win more sales without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else, then this is for you. If you want to know more about the Black Sheep Sales Method, then go to Aleashabahr.com. This episode is with Margaret Cascio. She's a seasoned expert with over 20 years of corporate leadership experience spanning sales, marketing, and client success. Margaret has since left the corporate world to focus on launching and transforming businesses. She partners with successful professionals to create impactful, conscious ventures and helps existing companies transition to more ethical practices, advocating for a balance between business success and social responsibility. Margaret is dedicated to fostering a future where companies thrive while making a meaningful difference. Tune in to learn how her insights can guide your business toward both growth and positive impact. And I met Margaret actually at a retreat, a personal development retreat. The longest one I've ever done. It was 7 days, and we did high ropes to recontextualize our relationship with fear, and discovered that if you didn't think about it, you would just do the right things up high. And it's when you thought about it that you'd psych yourself out. And so I'm so excited to be sharing her with you guys. Let's go. Welcome to the big show. Sales is not a dirty word.
Thank you, Aleasha. That brought back the best memories. When we were standing on that pole, we stood up and we're like 25 feet in the air. We did it. It's just awesome. Yeah.
Do you remember that little kid? He was 16 and he would just scurry up
Yeah.
everything. Because when you're 16, you think you're invincible. Like you have no idea. It was just a fantastic example compared to all of the older people who are like legs shaking, like slowly
Right.
pacing up there because we were all overthinking it.
Right. Right. Like, did I do my exercises? Am I strong enough? Can I really do this? Is my balance good? And blah, blah, blah. And, just letting your mind focus on the end result and getting there instead of putting more obstacles in place that, need to be there. So it was awesome lessons. Awesome.
It was. So I'm so excited that you're here to talk about future proofing your business without overwhelming everything else. Because I know for a lot of people, myself included, it's like when people ask what's your 5-year goal, it's like, I don't know. I don't even know barely like 90 days from now. And then you find yourself 5 years later and things are a lot harder.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of hinge points or forks in the road, I guess, that an owner has to decide. Well, should I hire on people and increase my payroll? Should I just increase sales and put more pressure on fulfillment? Should I have somebody in this position? Should I restructure my services? Like as you grow each stage, like the processes that used to work, they break. And then there's all the unpredictable situations that we were talking about that you experienced, like the pandemic or the tornado in the middle of the ocean keeping product from you when it's Christmas and, people are going to be pissed. So I'm really excited to talk to you about, your experience future proofing a company and what that looks like. So like, what are the first kind of things that people should be thinking about?
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because, like both you and I have experienced building independent solopreneur careers. I have done everything from the gamut. I built 3 solo companies that have grown, and then I've been a part of the executive team in 3 global companies. So, and everywhere in between, from and startups that grew from, 5 million a year to 600 million a year. So, and that's a space that's even you learn from all those different spaces. So, really to
Mhm.
answer your question, when And I think I'm so passionate about this specific topic because I've been in all those situations. And if I hadn't learned the lessons and put in place, and this didn't happen in every situation, but I've learned that if I do put these things in place and build a future proof company, those are the companies that were successful, or the projects, or the department, or whatever you want to, you know, however you want to classify it. But really, when we focus on really building plans in three specific areas, and that is mitigation of risk, management of uncertainties, and realization of opportunities, right? So when we look and put our plans in place and focus in those spaces, that is what creates the path to success without overwhelm, which we can all think about those things, but if we don't carve out the time to create these future proofed plans and build these companies the right way from the start, it is stressful and overwhelming because those things hit us and we're not prepared for them. So, those are the things that I'm advocating people put in place and make and carve the time out for, so that we can all have the balance in our life that we want and need, and that we can build these companies that are doing good for the world, because the world needs us. And if we're not there, then there is a hole, and it's important, and it's on us. So anyway, that's the focus of today's conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, when thinking about managing uncertainties, I think that is a big one that a lot of people struggle with because it makes it really difficult to make a decision because you're not sure which way it's going to go.
Yeah.
So, how do you recommend going about managing uncertainties?
Yeah. Well, and I think it all starts back from not letting you get to the place where you have this uncertainty in front of you and you have to make a decision. It is stepping back and making that plan right now.
Hmm.
So, you mentioned one of the things we talked about earlier, where there was a freighter with our product in the middle of the ocean, stuck in a hurricane. So we weren't getting that product by Christmas. And so I'll give a little context behind that and relate it back to the question that you just had. So I was the chief revenue officer for an impact fashion brand. And
Hmm.
so the first part of the business was a nonprofit, and that was focused on creating pathways to freedom for women at risk of sex slavery. Okay, so
Hmm.
that's a huge mission in and of itself,
Huge.
right?
Yeah.
But it was the giving the opportunities to the women. Once we were able to, and we worked with NGOs in country to actually go into those communities, educate these women, be able to provide those opportunities for them to get out of those situations, and their children, because many children are involved in this situation. Yeah. And bring
Exactly.
them to the facilities that we had created, which created a safe haven for these women. So once they were healthy and back into the opportunity, in the space to be able to contribute to society again, we provided opportunities for education, for job skills. We partnered with, and there was a lot of other things, microloans and things like that. And I'm not going to go all into that, but, and we also partnered with economically focused, or uh,
Ethically,
ethically,
environmentally,
thank
that's
you,
right.
ethically focused clothing manufacturers. So, and then from that, we actually created the fashion and the pieces that we would sell to go
Mm.
back into the programs, and it was a full circle thing. So that's a little bit of the background on the company. And so Christmas was a huge, I mean, we did 60% of our sales at Christmas time.
Mm.
So huge, huge sales opportunity. And all the product that we had designed and created was on a ship coming to us. And it was really set to arrive between Thanksgiving and Christmas, because we did a lot of sales in Black Friday, even
Mm.
though being a conscious focused company, Black Friday was not how we wanted to sell, but that was the opportunity to be able to get the product into many people's hands. Now, The plan that we had put in place to combat situations that we could not foresee, couldn't foresee a
Mhm.
hurricane in the middle of the ocean stopping our freighter. We had always communicated with our buyers about our mission, employing the women, what we did to offer these opportunities for the women to get out of these horrible situations. And it was a lot about the story and telling them who we were and why we're doing it and all of that. So that was part of our plan. And even though we didn't really realize it was a future proofed strategy in that one situation, that's what it ended up being. Because we were able to go to all of those customers that had purchased that product that was on that freighter in the middle of the ocean, and they weren't getting it by Christmas for being able to give gifts, but we were able to communicate with them and say, we are happy to give you your money back, and but here's the situation we're in. We talked a lot about how the women had already produced this and what the situation is, and this is also 6 to 9 months after kind of the peak of COVID. So we had lockdowns and we had all these things going on, and so we went out to the community who had purchased the products and let them know the situation, communicated the story. Not one customer canceled their order. Not one. And there was hundreds and hundreds of orders. We got so much response back from these people, and I have to remember back, but I think it was over 60% of the customers were first time buyers. So it wasn't like
Wow.
they knew our story, they were just being introduced to it. But because of the strategy of communication and building community and having them be a part of the story was beyond all of our wishes. We thought, okay, we're going to lose at least, 50% of our sales or something. Not one, not one. And the orders did not come in until the end of January.
Oh
There
my
were
gosh.
other situations. And again, not one cancellation. So I tell that story because that was a lesson learned. Even though that was a part of our strategy, we learned these are the things that we need to do. We need to be anticipating these problems. We need to be putting strategies in place that will build community, that will offer us flexibility, be able to help us to be adaptable to the situation and collaborative with our customers, with our suppliers, with the women, with everybody. And have everybody feel like they're a part of the solution and maybe even the problem, because everybody wants to help. So from that experience, we actually put a future proof plan in place. We took time, I think it was 3 or 4 days, and we went on a retreat and we mapped out all the situations that would affect our business now and potentially in the future, because that's another thing you need to be looking
Mhm.
into. Like, what is it, what could happen in our future that
Mhm.
will either one prevent us from doing business, which is what this example shows, or what are the opportunities in the future that we can foresee, and how can that allow us to be able to have new sales channels, new improved customer service, improved engagement. What are those things? So that was kind of the kickoff for that company and being able to put those plans in place. And that strategic plan really led our future direction. The company actually shifted from a less, well, when I started with them, they were 95% focused on direct to consumer. By the
Mm.
time I left, because of the competitive nature of direct to consumer, the expense and that all of that opportunity, we shifted to a 50-50, and I think it's more now. I'm still on their advisory board, but of B2B business. So we actually opened up opportunities with in the travel and hospitality industry is another area I come from, and being able to share that message in that space and bigger orders, lots more opportunity to share the message about the women and things like that. So
Very cool. I mean, that is one where it's extremely scary to think about losing all of that for such a impactful cause. And I think it's a great testament to just communication and transparency also, which it should be a guideline for every human conversation, including marketing and sales conversations. So, love that. When we talk about mitigating risks, I'm guessing that's kind of what you were doing when you were doing that strategic planning session is like, imagining what if scenarios and maybe growing that B2B arm was sort of mitigating the risk
mhm,
associated with being in a direct consumer market.
mhm, mhm. Definitely. And that because when you get in those situations, all of us have been in those situations. There's a storm coming, right? And luckily, if we know, we go to the grocery store, we pack up on, food and essentials and things like that, right? That's
Right.
a risk mitigation strategy. But in business, there isn't a lot of future telling that comes to your knocks on your door and go, okay, this is coming in 6 months, right?
Right.
But it's being able to have that plan in place and those leaders that are taking that direction before those things happen, not letting it happen, but knowing that those are the potential opportunities and having a plan in place. How will we react? What will we do? What is the plan? And many times it actually opens up opportunities because you're thinking bigger. You're thinking, okay, well, what if this situation, happens? So let's take AI for an example, right?
Mhm.
AI has been around for many, many, many years and it's been used in big data. Hasn't really been a consumer tool until
Mm,
recently, maybe the last couple years, right?
mhm.
And now it is, if you talk to some people, it's replacing jobs. It's creating, communication that is fake and allowing bad actors to be able to enter into situations without the visibility that we had
Mm.
in the past, right? So that is kind of the bad side of AI if you talk to some people. But if you look at those companies that are have been watching AI for a while in the big data space and thinking about how can they actually use this to improve. So one of the biggest, I think a good example of that is the opportunity to be able to create a better communication with your customer, right? It allows you to be able to put processes and systems in place that can create some automation, can allow you to have that human connection. But when we also take, and this is another word, and I'd love to talk about this too if we've got some time, but that radical responsibility for that
Mhm.
communication, right? You can allow those tools to come in and help you be more productive and more personable and one on one. But you need to take that radical responsibility of that relationship and not allow it to overpower and take over that complete conversation. So, those companies that are using AI in this situation to allow them to be more productive, allow them to service more clients in a more personal way. That is the opportunity that have a lot of companies have jumped on that bandwagon. Now, taking that radical responsibility for that tool is hugely important because it can go over to that bad side quickly and easily. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of companies that are now being able to communicate more effectively with their communities because of these tools and still having that personal relationship.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like that realizing opportunities is really noticing this it could be a risk and we could also leverage it as an opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think taking the time again on the front end of instead of being one of those companies that didn't plan for AI and then just all of a sudden jumps in, has no education around it, and
Yeah.
it overwhelms. And then it puts that fakeness in there and allows bad actors to come into that realm. Or the other companies who have been watching this for a while when it's kind of outside the realm and big data and these other big companies. But then it starts to come in more into the mainstream and they've been studying it and knowing and understanding it and incorporating it into the way they do business, the conscious focus of how they want to interact with their community, with their stakeholders, and using it as a tool instead of allowing it to overwhelm. Because AI can. I mean, it's probably one of the best examples right now of if you hadn't planned for it and you just let it in, it can be a a bad situation versus a tool.
Yeah. So it's really just being intentional in your decisions and thinking through all the possibilities and what would the results of those possibilities be in order to understand which one you want to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like for the people that we're talking to, these personal one-on-one conversations are so important. So important to build that community and share your message and have people be involved in who you are and what you're doing for the world. So when companies take that time, and this is probably the hardest thing to do when you're starting out and you're building a company is to go, okay, I'm going to actually take a good chunk of my productive day to plan for the future. But it's so important because when you aren't in that situation, like we just talked about, you haven't done that plan, the way you react to a situation, a problem, something that comes up in your business that you don't expect, you go from your gut. Now, if you've planned and you know what you want to do, then that gut reaction is in alignment, right? But if you haven't, if something has come along and you haven't thought about it, you haven't planned for it, you haven't put the work in behind it. And I'm going to go back to my example with Sudara, where, we had created this community and how we communicated that message and everything. That was part of our DNA and part of what we did on a regular basis. Now, when
Mhm.
the situation came up, we didn't go, oh no, how are we going to handle this situation? We just continued doing what we had done before. We had continued to communicate and not hide anything and saying, this is the situation we're in. And, we would love to work with you the best way for both of us, making it a win-win solution because there's always a win-win solution. There is, if you're going to go out into the market and think, I always have to win, that's great. But if you always think I have to win and I don't care if somebody else loses, that's not okay. That's not how you're going to grow in the future. So again, part of future proofing is how when we get in these situations, how do we create a win-win solution for us, our customers, our stakeholders, our suppliers, our partners? How do we do that? And again, back to the gut reaction. If you've thought through it, if you've lined it out, if you have solutions in place, then your gut is going to know what to do, and you're going to be able to react without the overwhelm. Because if you get into those situations and you haven't thought about it, haven't planned for it, haven't implemented those things, then that's when the overwhelm happens.
It's really easy to get in an analysis paralysis, and you just don't know what the best, decision to make is, and, we've talked a lot about things being win-win offline, obviously, and win-lose, and in the 80s, it was such a greed-driven environment, and that has created the world that we live in now. So I think we can see that when you just win at all costs, and regardless of the expense, the ultimate result is not good,
Yeah,
even for the person who won originally. I mean, look at Bernie Madoff and lots of other examples.
a great example.
Yeah, so I think that's a great stopping point for us. And we've reached the end of yet another episode of Sales is Not a Dirty Word. All right, Margaret, thank you so much for making an appearance as our guest today. And can you tell everyone how they can find out more about you and work with you?
Yeah, thanks, Aleasha. Well, it's been wonderful having this conversation. I'd love to continue with anybody else who's curious. You can get in touch with me. Probably the best place is our website, which is Entrepreneur, and that's ENTREPAIRNEUR. So it's a company I have with my husband, and thus the Pareneur part. and,
Yeah.
and I'm Margaret at entrepreneur.com. So, and we love to have these conversations. So reach out and I can hopefully answer any questions, put you in. And we've got lots of resources also around structuring how to create those sessions, those planning sessions for future proofing without overwhelm. And I'd love to share those with anybody.
Yeah. Okay, you guys, if you're at a turning point with your business or that's coming up soon, definitely reach out to Margaret, and thank you all for listening. Until next time.